Hello and welcome to the Simulcast discussion podcast, Divergence Cast. Yes, you've heard right. It's the only podcast voted most likely to take over the world with llamas. But as always, I'm one of your hosts, JJ. I'm joined by my fellow co-hosts, Alex.
No.
And Colin.
Howdy.
And this week we will be doing our Simulcast wrap-up for, I believe this is Simulcast season summer of 2015, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not in the wrong year, right? Because I could always drive my DeLorean back out. But yes, as this is our season review, we may well spoil some stuff, so just be prepared for that if you wish to avoid them. But if you should,
It's not may well spoil, it's will spoil.
We will. Yes, we will. But if you don't mind that, then ignore what I've just said and continue onward. But before we will begin, even though I was wanting not to do some news, a couple bombs dropped while we were gone. So first up, at the end of Wagnaria Season 3, a 1-hour special was announced at the end of Season 3. So it's not the end. Yay!
Hooray.
Yay. But, yeah, so there is that. And, as well, Blockade Battlefront. The last episode is finally making its debut in, Saturday, October the 3rd. So, yay. It only took an entire season. Yeah. But anyways, that was the only news I was wanting to talk about. Did you guys have anything that you especially wanted to talk about?
Nope.
Not particularly.
Alright, then we shall get started on our simulcast reviews of this season. So first up is Gangsta. So how about you, Colin? What were your thoughts on the series?
Gangsta to me felt like this season's Blockade Battlefront, only not as good. It established a really cool world, a really cool lore, some characters that you wish you knew more about, but then kind of just overloaded the viewer with just storylines going everywhere. You never seemed to know exactly what was going on. It tried to fill you in at various places, and ultimately it did, especially the last episode, just felt like it raised a lot more questions than it answered, and we never really found out anything about the show. Like, we got a little bit of clarification, but it was mostly just along the lines of world building. But now we've got like 6 story arcs going at once, and none of them look like anything close to a conclusion. So
yeah, it's definitely a series that feels like it really wants to be longer, but you don't really know if it will actually get an additional season.
Yeah, this is definitely one, though. I think if it did continue, I'd definitely keep watching it, because it definitely had enough to interest me and, make me want to watch more. It just gave me so little. It felt like, this is an incomplete series, basically, is all I get the feeling out of.
Yeah, it definitely feels like that. Like, it feels like it wanted to do a lot more than what it actually had available. I mean, the series itself does kind of feel like it's focused much more on the grittier side of, say, like a Black Lagoon style type action series, where it's gritty realism, but doesn't quite have the humor aspect that both Black Lagoon and Jormungandr interjected along.
Yeah, it tried to do so much. It tried to be a lot more gritty and at the same time less realistic than Black Lagoon. And I don't think that was a great mix, because it just opened up way too many storylines, and it created a world too complex to fully explore within 12 episodes.
Yeah, that's the thing. It definitely feels like it's probably a series. If it doesn't get another additional seasons, it's probably a series you're just better off reading the manga too.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What were your thoughts, Alex?
Pretty much the same as Colin's. It started out like really promising, really stylish, but then towards the end just introduced like too much. And it was shocking that, I think anybody who didn't know, it would be shocking to learn that this was only going to be 12 episodes.
Yeah.
especially with everything they try to do in those last couple episodes.
Especially the last episode, anyway, just by itself. It
that's
just
the thing,
cuts off.
Yeah, like, it just ends with this whimper. It's like, you see Warwick just on the ground. He's like, whatever.
Yeah, like I said, I was talking to both Alex and Colin before, but like I mentioned before, it felt like they were originally planning on having another last episode, but just felt like they cut the episode out or something.
I think there was even way too much open-ended for the to have just been one extra episode. It feels like this is supposed to be a 2-core series that just doesn't have a second core announced.
And probably won't be announced because the studio declared bankruptcy.
Yo, yeah, well,
unless somebody else picks it up. But who knows if that'll happen.
Never know, but yeah, it's really hard to tell.
Mm-hmm.
But anything else about Gangster? I mean, the ending, yeah, like we mentioned before, it just kind of cuts off, and the entire series just felt like it had so much going on, yet just didn't wrap anything up.
Yeah, and I mean, sure, just in the medium that is anime, you get a lot of series that there's no way they can possibly do everything they want to within their 12-episode run, but you still at least get a lot of good ones that give you some feeling of closure, at least wrap up whatever arc they were talking.
That's the saying. It didn't have any wrap up at the end. Like
there was none. It didn't feel like we even got through a single arc. It felt like the series was just starting when it ended. And maybe that's just because of how complex the series is, because it is a very, very detail heavy world. But this just, it didn't feel like it did the source material justice.
No.
And I think it was primarily just because of time constraints. I do not think the quality of the series is bad
the quality
in any way.
Is really high. It's just
there's just way too much they tried to do within a single season.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to rate it, I'd give it. Well, it's really tough right now because with that ending, it's really hard for me to recommend it to people. I mean, if they announced additional seasons, yes, by all means, I'd give it a recommendation. But as it stands right now, it's really difficult for me to recommend, especially when you have like two alternatives, Black Lagoon and Jormungand, that I'd be much more willing to recommend any day of the week.
Right. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I think I gave this one ended up giving it a 7, and it's purely based off what's there is good. But what's there doesn't feel like anything more than a prologue, and it's a prologue to, at this point, nothing.
Yeah, pretty much. I'd probably rate it anywhere from a 7 to 8 as well, just for that. Yeah. But I wouldn't really recommend it to people.
Right. It would be like, if somebody came to me and said, wow, Black Lagoon was really cool, do you know anything else like it? It'd be like, yeah, but...
Yeah, I just recommend the Jormungand. But yeah, how about you, Alex?
I don't know. I'd probably say I wound up like a 7. I'm pretty much with you guys on that. It's just really now, especially with the points you guys just made, it really now dawns on me how this series, almost the entire time, felt like it was about absolutely nothing. There was stuff that happened, but you'd be hard pressed. Like, what happened?
Yeah. But anyways, okay. If we have nothing else to say about Gangsta, well, I mean, I suppose there is one more thing. The music really was good, I felt.
Gangsta's probably got my favorite opening of any anime of all time. The music in this series was excellent. The visuals were excellent. The animation was excellent. It's not a bad series. The production values were all there. What was there was interesting and fun to watch. It's just, it was purely a case of this series needed more. It felt a lot like the Angel Beats scenario, except for Angel Beats at least had a conclusion.
Yeah. But anyways, I guess moving on, we can talk about our favorite show of the season, or at least mine, Overlord. So yeah,
Overlord's pretty high up there for me, and to go the opposite, to kind of go back to something I mentioned with Gangsta, Overlord, I feel like, yeah, this is obviously a series that could definitely not do its entire source material in a single season, which seems to be almost exclusively what Madhouse deals with. But yet Madhouse has discovered apparently the right formula to find 1 or 2 arcs, get them done in the series, give you a good view of everything going on, give you a satisfying conclusion, and not have to tell you the entire series within 12 episodes.
Yeah, I mean, even if they just leave it off at that and it doesn't get any additional seasons, which I hope it does, what's there is enough to get, is satisfying enough, and even if it's just go read the source material, I would probably read the source material.
I've already got the source material on my annual list to go read now.
Yeah. But just starting out in the additionals in the start of the season, I wasn't thinking that highly of the series, but just as it went along, it easily became one of my favorite series of this season. Like, it's just really well written. Just all the characters are really, really good, and the main character himself is straight up the most human character I've ever seen in an anime, and he's freaking Skeletor.
Yeah, the writing of this series has been pretty top notch. It's not always like incredibly surprising, but it's managed to take a bunch of tropes and things that have become really, really tired in other series and completely flip them on their head and make them extremely exciting and fun to watch. It's made all its characters, maybe not relatable in some situations, but always interesting and, decently defined. It's, world building is top notch. And when it comes to, and this might be more Madhouse's influence, but when it comes to all their action scenes and their just climactic points, there are no other show this season close.
I really love
action
those last 2 episodes, just how they handled it, just with him announcing all his, basically activating all of his powers ahead of time, and you only get to see their effects as the fight goes on. Like, the part I really loved about the second to last episode was when he did the time bomb things or whatever they was. And it's like, that really stands out. And then as soon as she charges up, the bombs activate and explode in her face, and that was just awesome what they did there.
I felt like that whole last, I don't know if you call it an arc, but the last 2 episodes, with that, the giant fight scene it was the perfect mix between Log Horizon and Sword Art, where you had awesome, like, battle scenes and everything going on, but it wasn't like Log Horizon where it had to go into meticulous detail about every single thing going on, and it had to, when you're watching Log Horizon, it feels like it's an MMO because they never let you forget. Overlord knows that you don't have to keep telling everybody that it's an MMO. It's fairly evident from what he's doing. I also just want to point out, he's a giant fucking cheater, and that works so well for the character. Because he wins because he's using a bunch of cash shop items. I love that because that's perfect for who the character is, but at the same time, he makes it such a badass situation by the fact that he just... the Guardians and stuff are supposed to be the contemporary to a raid boss.
Yeah.
And he took one down by himself.
With cash shop items.
And if you'll just remember Log Horizon Season 2, they spent like 8 episodes with 30 people taking down raid bosses. And Momonga's just like, fuck it, cash shop items, let me do it by myself. And it's such a...
Oh, and of course,
so
Sharknado.
Cool.
Sharknado.
Oh yeah, he has a Sharknado. I forgot about that. Holy crap.
The Sharknado. Oh, but yeah, the entire series is just really, really well done. Like, if you're just, I remember somebody, I wasn't sure if it was earlier today or yesterday, but I know somebody in my mentions mentioned that if you just tell somebody the concept of the show, it would sound dumb. But when you actually see it in action, it's engaging.
Right.
Like, it's just really well done and really well written, and all the characters are interesting. Like, maybe not, some of them aren't as relatable, but just the way they handle the main character,
they don't need to be relatable, quite honestly. This series feels more like an entertainment piece than any type of, like, well, I say that. I was going to say than any type of, like, thematic, deep, sought, inducing material. But it actually does have those moments where it is quite thought-provoking because it, just because of Momonga. Momonga is the relatable part. He's the relatable part that gives you a view of his humanity or his lack thereof and makes you actually think about the situation he's in and the decisions he makes. The rest of the world doesn't need to be relatable at that point.
Yeah. It's definitely a main character focused series. Like
Right. But it does the opposite of something like Sword Art Online or Danmachi, where it makes its character completely unrelatable by making them just a perfect Mary Sue. It dehumanizes the character to the point where his humanity stands out more,
yeah, it
and you
doesn't.
actually
Yeah,
think about it.
yeah,
And it's so wonderfully done that, this is what this was the lifeblood and the just new twist that the kind of MMO subgenre needed.
yeah.
Because,
That's the thing. He doesn't really go for the just standard I'm the good guy kind of character, but at the same time he isn't ridiculously evil. He's doing what he needs to do, and
right.
he's not really conflicted by emotions as
He's
a
not an
yeah.
evil character. He's not a good character either. He's a realistic character.
Yeah, he's not really too defined by any particular role.
Hmm.
He's just himself,
Yeah.
and he's an engaging character because of it. Overall, as far as ratings are concerned for Overlord, I'd probably either give it a high 9 or maybe even a 10 I'm not sure what I'm trying to say by if. I'm still not entirely sure how I would rate it, but it's definitely high up there for me. I would definitely recommend it to people.
Oh yeah, and I have recommended it to a lot of people. This was my third favorite show of the season, and it's like right there on that borderline between an 8 or a 9 for me. It had its faults for me at certain areas, but overall it's an amazing series that I think was highly elevated by the few moments of just jaw-dropping Madhouse style
Yes,
badassery that nobody else can do.
especially like the I'm a hypocrite moment. Like
That is
that
one of
is
my
yeah.
favorite moments in any
That's
anime of all
that's
time.
straight up. I'd say that would be the defining scene of this season for me.
That was the defining scene, definitely the defining scene, and maybe not of the season, but of the show for sure, and definitely one of my favorite anime scenes of all time. Because it really that little scene completely encapsulates who Momonga is and just the entire feel of the show. Just at the same time being completely inhuman, being completely human, and being relatable because he's not good or evil. He's some just organic place in between.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely one of those series is that I definitely highly recommend to people.
Yeah, no, I've recommended this to everyone, and I would keep recommending it to everyone because I can't imagine too many people who wouldn't like this.
Yeah, and I know a number of our friends have already started watching it or completed it, and yeah, it's just definitely one of those shows that you definitely need to watch for this
Yeah,
season. It's easily my pick for the show of the season. So
yeah. Like I said, it's my number 3 right now, and only beaten out by two shows that I think are, legendarily good. So yeah, it definitely excellent. I've recommended it to literally everyone I know who watches anime, and I've gotten nothing but good, good, thankful replies out of that. And just I love Overlord, and honestly, I was very skeptical about the chances of this getting a second season a little while back, but looking at the Blu-ray sales for this last week, Overlord Blu-ray 1 was number 4, sandwiched in between Idolmaster and Kuroko's Basketball, which I was like, holy crap, that's really high. Because if you know about Idolmaster and Kuroko's Basketball, those are some damn popular series. Like I think the only things above them were like One Piece and Charlotte. So, it's doing much better in sales than I thought it would. It's actually pretty popular in Japan, looking at the like popularity polls and stuff. So I'm willing to go out and I'm not going to say this is a high chance of a sequel,
yeah,
but
but
I'd say it's moderately
yeah,
high.
it's definitely a moderate chance
Yeah,
of a sequel.
I think it's on the high end of moderate chance though.
Yeah. But anyways, I guess moving on from Overlord.
I will say before we move on,
Oh, go
I do
ahead.
plan on watching
Mm.
the show sometime in the fall season, based purely off everyone's reception of the show.
Good. Just do it in October. It's the month of the skeletons. Come
Oh
on.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's
I was actually
perfect.
thinking about watching it next, possibly.
Yeah.
It sort of depends how quickly, because since I got Deemer to watch more of Prison School, or
Mhm.
to watch a little more of it.
Hold
I
on
guess
while I go convince
I
Steamer to make you watch.
Go convince Steamer to make you watch Overlord.
well, either way, I agreed to watch Noragami, like put it more as a like,
Okay.
top priority thing. But yeah, maybe
Yeah.
after that, because
Yeah.
I might
I
start it
mean,
soon.
yeah.
It depends.
I mean,
I might.
Noragami's only one core, and you kind of have to avoid the OVAs simply because of how much spoilers they are for the next season.
Like I said, I do plan just based off the reception it's gotten to try out Overlord
Hmm.
pretty soon, hopefully.
At this point, it's starting to look like Madhouse is, can't do much wrong. So, because the only Madhouse shows I've seen have all been excellent,
Yeah.
all up
I
to
mean, they
their
do a lot, and
90s.
a couple of shows that they do have been kind of meh, but by and large, their major shows are always great.
Right.
Anyways, I guess moving on then, we will start our. Well, I guess Colin was wanting to talk about both Rokka and Chaos Dragon at the same time.
So, I had an interesting situation this season. This season I started a lot of shows. There wasn't much I was super excited about going in, so I just decided to give a lot of shows a try. And Rokka and Chaos Dragon were both shows that by the time I got to episode 3, I like to give every show at least 3 episodes, your old Madoka rule. They were both sitting right about a 5 for me. Neither one had really impressed me much. The characters were very, very bland. The worlds were, not. I'd say Rocka's at least setting was interesting, but neither one of them were like anything to write home about. Neither one had really gotten its story going all that much, and so I decided to give them both, keep them both going, and one went one way and the other went drastically the other way. Uh, I guess we'll go with Rocka first. Rocka's actually ended up impressing me quite a bit after after you actually got into the story, you got the idea about the mystery of the Seventh Brave, and it gave you a bit more background on the characters. It was I ended up giving it a 7. It was never a show that I'd be like, yes, this is amazing or something, but I thought it was decently entertaining and worth my time, and I actually ended up looking forward to the new episode every
Yeah.
week.
Yeah, that's the thing is, like, I wasn't too high on it, but at the same time, it always managed to keep me interested enough to go on to another episode. I didn't really feel like dropping it, even if it's if a show isn't really keeping me interested enough or not, I'm just going to go ahead and drop it. That tends to be my mentality. But Rocka was a show that, even though I wasn't high on it, it just kept going, and it's just kept being interesting, at least enough to
Right.
keep me interested.
And that's what I think is the best description for the show. It was an interesting show. It never defined its characters or story or world enough to make me like I have to go read the source material or anything like that. But as just a week to week watch, yeah, there's a lot worse I could have watched week to week. It kept me coming back for more, and so I'm glad I stuck with it after
Yeah.
episode 3.
I
That
will
ended up
say
being
this
the
thing
decision.
about it. I like the concept that they had going, where it's like, hey, it's the party going off to defeat the evil overlord, or evil, not evil overlord, evil demon king or whatever.
Now that'd be a twist if these guys were going off to fight Momonga and this was a sequel series to Overlord.
Uh, but I just like the concept that they're going off to face the evil demon king, then they get sidetracked to where they're basically suspicious of one another and basically trying to kill each other. Like, I like that take on the standard fantasy genre that they had
Yeah.
going for them.
No, I
Yeah,
really like the
yeah,
concept of this, and it felt a lot like just kind of a short story, just like a segment within a larger story, which is
yeah.
kind of exactly what it was.
That's basically what it felt like.
And I like it
Yeah,
as that.
yeah,
I really have very little compulsion to go find out anything more about the series or anymore. I think this was very nice little encapsulation of a moment of the story.
yeah. Now I kind of wish they cut off that last part
Yeah,
where
I wasn't a big fan of the
the
ending.
the
They like
cow the
tried to keep it
cow
going and
chick.
everything. It's like, no,
Cow,
just
no.
stop. You were good. You were actually a good show. Just be
Yeah.
grateful because you almost weren't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a cow, a girl dressed up as a cow, and she's another seven.
Hmm.
After we already solved who the seventh was
Yeah, no,
before.
I wasn't high on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as that's concerned, I'd probably go anywhere from a 6 or 7. Like, it was enjoyable enough to keep me going towards it, and for a short encapsulated story, yes, that would be great. I mean, I don't quite get why so many people rate it as highly as they do. Honestly, like I know a lot of people who are it's one of their favorite shows, and I like this fine, but I don't get it.
It feels to me like this is another situation a lot like Danmachi, a lot like Sword Art, where there's just something that particular group of people latch onto. A lot of times it's the main character or something, and that's all they see in the show, and you know they kind of look. I guess it's kind of like the rose-tinted goggles situation where they look past all the flaws and they can only see what they want to see. But for those type of people, the show's great. I will say, if you like Sword Art, you like Danmachi, you're probably going to see past a lot of the flaws with the characters in this show, and you'll probably enjoy it even more than I did. I'd say this is much better than both of those shows as well. So yeah, if you like those, go give this a shot.
Yeah.
That matter, go watch God Eater 2. You probably like it a lot as well. Oh, God.
But anyways.
Yeah. So on the flip side of Rokka, we have Chaos Dragon. If you like Sword Art, if you like Danmachi, you'll probably still hate Chaos Dragon. This show, okay, so this was the other one. This was about a 5 when we got to episode 3, and I was like, fuck it, I've got a lot of free time. I'll keep watching. And it actually got up to a 6. Around episode 4 or 5, we met this really cool character called Kagrava. He was like this like mecha guy who ran a city as like a merchant lord and everything. It's like really cool character. And it was like, okay, this is enough to actually keep me watching the show. I'm glad I kept going. Then everything went wrong. This character kind of just fell by the wayside and only appeared at like various little points, which were like the best points in the show. Everything that could have possibly gone wrong with Chaos Dragon did. Everything. I mean, it started out looking terrible. It was badly animated. The music was no great shakes. The story was very, very cliche. The world design was... The premise of the show was essentially not Japan was invaded by not China, and their ally, not America, decided to just defend their bases. Didn't care about everything else that happened. And now not China and not America are fighting over not Japan. But it's all like a fantasy setting. But it's very, 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 very transparent about what they're going for as a basis here. And the characters are all terrible. The main character is a white-haired, red-eyed, absolute nothing piece of character. And when I say absolute nothing, I mean he makes Kirito and Belkun look like a Momonga. Like this guy, at least Belkun is a contemptible little piece of shit who is a whiny little brat. The main character of I think his name's Akusi or something, or I can't barely remember his name. Ibuki, I don't remember. He is absolutely the most nothing character of all time, and every time he opens his mouth, you just want to slap him for being an annoying little piece of shit. He's like. When they end up fighting like a zombie army or whatever, he's like crying because he doesn't want to kill the zombies. And like, he's just a contemptible nothing character. He has no personality. At least Belkun's an annoying little punk. You can say something about him. You can't say anything about this character. And that's just the main character. We get to the side characters and they're not interesting. They're not relatable. They're fucking stupid. Like, just intelligence level of nothing. Characters just come in and out at no point. The few characters that are almost likable in the series, which are very, very minor characters, end up dying at the hands of more important characters. The lore can't decide what it wants to do. At certain points, there's not even implications. They're straight up, oh yeah, incest. And then the finale of the show is just the most just stupid.
Wouldn't it be quote unquote finale?
Writing. Like, this show, it started out as a 5, got up to a 6 around episode 5, then we got back down to a 5, then we got to a 4, and episode 11 episode 11 is where we get the incest, episode 12 is where we get one of the worst finales I've ever seen of a show. Oh, also, there's a lot of terrible CG action in it. A lot of terrible CG action. It makes, Arslan look like a masterpiece. This show is my first ever 3. Most shows, when they're about a 3 level, I drop them. This show took so long to get to a 3 that it tricked me into thinking it might be decent till about episode 7. It tricked me into thinking it might be decent. And then it just got so terrible that I just finished it. The only show I've ever finished to get a 3. And it was funny, I screenshotted the other day. I've watched at this point like 95 anime titles, and on my anime list, number 95, right down there at the very bottom, is Chaos Dragon. Right above it is the anime adaptation of Rosario Vampire. So that's how terrible the show was. It's below my most hated anime adaptation of all time. So yeah, there's my Colin watched just to hurt himself physically and mentally show of the season was Chaos Dragon, and don't watch it. Not even if you like.
Not even once.
You like Sword Art, you probably like Danmachi. Nobody could like Chaos Dragon. This show was terrible. If you like it, I'm sorry. Go watch the Star Wars prequels to follow it up, because that's the only thing of comparable quality I can imagine. Maybe just watch the cutscenes from Final Fantasy 13. That was probably right about the same level.
But I guess anything else about Chaos Dragon?
Yeah, it was fucking terrible.
And on that note, we shall move on to Wagnaria, season 3, which hasn't actually ended yet, sort of. So yeah, Alex. So how do you feel about this season compared to the previous 2?
Well, it's been a while since you're probably better to get a comparison of the two because you actually rewatched it before.
Well, I only
this season.
sort of rewatched the first season. I wound up realizing that I only had the Blu-rays of the second season. I didn't have a Blu-ray player on me at the time, but yeah.
Like, I will say I think I might have liked this. I think it has more to do with just sort of in general the series just overall coming together in the last.
Yeah, I think the
season.
major thing about this season was it was trying to wrap up so many plot points in the series, and then it did it so well that it actually felt satisfying. Like, there were these characters who, yeah, they were clearly love interests for each other, and yeah, this season we're actually getting them together, not dancing around it. Here are these other love interest characters that we aren't dancing around either, though we're technically we're not. We still have a 1 hour special, so who knows? They might not actually resolve it or not.
I hope they do.
Yeah, well, yeah, I hope they do as well. And I mean, it's a 1 hour special, so anything could happen. And then there are these other background characters who one is always missing and always lost. And hey, we're finally getting them together, and they're no longer getting lost or stuff like that. Though they are getting kind of ignored by everyone else. And yeah, this other character who is annoying and purple-haired and whose name is Yamada. She's finally getting back with her family, though technically still.
I actually like the one. Actually, like the one part in the episode when she's thinking that what's his name, Soma took all the pictures, but it was actually her that took all the pictures the entire time.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty great. Just in general, I feel like this season has been doing a lot of good stuff as far as just establishing that, hey, this is going to be the final season. We're going to wrap stuff up.
Like I would actually say I consider this one better than the second season, but I think it's also only because, like, sort of, it had been a while since I watched the show, but like, you know, I've seen these characters throughout the 2 seasons. That's, I think, what sort of, you know, knowing that it's pretty much going towards the end, I think sort of elevated it. Like I said, the fact that they actually at the end of it all have pretty much established the character relationships. It felt like, you know, how you waited for it was worth it.
Yeah, it felt like they were progressing all the characters really well. Like, Izuna, I think, or am I thinking of someone else? The orange-haired chick. I think her name is Izuna. Or am I thinking of a different... Anyways, you get...
Iname?
Iname, that's who I was thinking of. Iname, like, the whole progression that they showed of her where she's no longer as punchy with her agoraphobia. Like, she no longer pummels the main character so much as gets a bit shaky.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, there's that last scene with her dad where it's like, that's a punch full
Full of
love and restraint or whatever.
Not that far was hilarious.
Yeah, that entire scene.
But I did forget how annoying her father was.
Yeah. Yeah, her father was really annoying, but it's always satisfying just to see him get punched. And that entire scene was just our family sells things with fists. The entire yeah, that was just great. But yeah, the just how they've been developing all the characters at this point, it feels satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
Just how they're showing them, just all their arcs and stories wrap up. Just like Sota and I always blank on her name.
I know what you're talking about
Chick
though.
with the katana. Let's
Katana.
just
Yeah.
say that. That's the main thing everyone remembers from her. But yeah, they're finally wrapping up their thing. They're no longer dancing around that. Hey, these two characters kind of love each other, but they're kind of stupid, or at least one is kind of dunce. They're kind of dense around each other, but they're hey, now we're finally wrapping it up, and hey, the main character is finally realizing that he loves Izuna, even though hey,
Anime.
Iname. Why do I don't even what am I even thinking of Izune from? Anyways, Iname is like even though she's older than 12 and not a cute small thing, he actually loves her.
I actually sort of like how, even though it returned to that gag, and I think in the first episode, it never really actually took any part of his personality in the
Yeah.
third season. It's almost like he had gradually sort of slipped out of it.
Yeah, that's
It's not really brought up,
yeah.
really.
That's the thing I really love about this season is all the characters feel like they've grown. Like
Hmm.
you actually seen them grown from as the series went along, but now it actually feels like it's attesting to that. Like
Uh,
yeah. And
I,
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say this in regards to how the episode ended, but if you have something else to say, I'll hold on. Or I'll just,
No, go. You can go ahead. I don't
I
think
was
yeah.
I was gonna say that I just wish it had, like, I know there's the whole Lord of the Takanashis
Yeah.
coming, or the Takanashi coming.
Yeah, Lord of the
I just wish
Takanashi.
it could have still ended in
Yeah.
less, cliffhanger-ish way. It's not even
Yeah.
really cliffhanger. It's like
Yeah,
we're
just
gonna expand the series, just because.
yeah, I mean, if it didn't have that announcement at the end of it, it would just be like a wait what kind of moment. But the fact I'm just happy that they're announcing more content for Wagnaria, and hell, it's a 1 hour special that's pretty much the series finale.
Mhm.
So, as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy with that. Even if it did sort of end up very cliffhangery.
Yeah.
I kind of like the direction that they are going with that 1 hour special, though. It's like a weird fantasy kind of thing with all the characters from the series. I'm interested to see how that works out. But
Yeah.
I am also a bit disappointed that there wasn't much Maya in the last episode, though.
Maybe we'll just have like a whole section devoted to her in the or the Takanashi. She's like the mage, the white mage of normal or something like that.
The white mage of
Or
normal.
just a
That
normal mage.
the normal mage. That would be great. I mean, she did sort of appear in the last episode when they were taking the group picture, and it's like okay, I get it. It's the normal thing to do. Uh, but yeah, I mean, just overall, I'd rate the season three like I'd probably rate it in either an 8 or 9. Like it just really developed all the characters from the season and just really wrapped up everything I wanted it to wrap up, except for like the last part of the season really well. So overall, I definitely love it, and the series in general is just such an enjoyable little series, if for no other reason than the characters themselves are just so wonderful.
Yeah. And I gotta say, I don't know why the credit song that they chose or that they did for this season, for some reason, it just like sort of felt like the culmination of like all the entire
Yeah, well,
seasons.
I think the credit song along with the visuals really just was altogether really enjoyable and matched the series really well.
Mhm.
I mean, honestly, it's my favorite closing of the
I
season.
would actually that I pretty much agree. It's probably one of my favorites of the season, and it was a relatively weak season for openings and closings too.
Yeah,
So
yeah. But yeah, see, anything else about Wagnaria?
I got nothing.
Alright. Well, then, I guess moving on, you guys can talk about Jitsu wa Watashi wa, or translated, actually I am.
Well, this series, as I think I mentioned before, I kind of threw on my list. I was expecting nothing from it. It was just kind of there because I was like, oh, a vampire rom-com.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this will fill that gaping hole in my heart where a good anime of Rosario Vampire would be. And you know what? It kind of achieved that, and I wasn't expecting it to. It was. It ended up being one of my, not my one of my top 5, but in my top 10 anime of this season. I ended up giving it a 8. I thought the conclusion was actually pretty good. It, it was just the last half of the whole season ended up being excellent. It, and as far as a harem show, it didn't rely on an absolutely nothing protagonist. It had almost no fan service. It managed to avoid so many of the tropes and general downsides that the genre seems to be just rife with. Like, this is one of the few harem shows that I could go out and suggest to people who don't like harem shows. And of course, even describing it as a harem is a bit. I don't know if that's completely accurate because it's like technically, but the protagonist really only has eyes for the one girl.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. This was just a really, really surprisingly good show to me. I greatly enjoyed it, every episode, and I would love to see another season of this. I don't think it's actually going to happen, but even with just one season was such a nice surprise that I'm super happy I watched it and have to suggest it to everyone who likes any sort of rom-com anime.
Yeah, like I pretty much agree with like everything you said, and it's just I think as it is, I probably have him as my number 4 because I sort of just think different. Yeah, I sort of think differently on other series, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But I think had this been more consistent, I'd possibly even put it above Charlotte because I don't know. I really, really enjoyed the series. It was very pleasant. It was cute oftentimes, and especially coming into the finale, especially the way they left off, like you could have expected to be sort of similar or like your typical, so I'm going to get my friend back kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It actually managed to still like you feel it more than that, but still end like even though you would like to see more of it.
It gave you a decent. It was a
you're-
series that managed to wrap itself up without concluding its story because it couldn't. The manga's still going. There was no way you could conclude that story, but it gave you a satisfying ending.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Who knows if it's going to get another season and all that.
Yeah, and I put this one's chances at moderately low. It definitely could, and I don't see much buzz around this series.
And it's just unfortunate because it's just overall just really just like it's like you said, it's a harem without evolving to the typical fan service humor.
It went the opposite. It was the foil to Monster Musume this season, whereas Monster Musume went as hard with the harem genre as you possibly could.
Mm-hmm.
This show just kind of, it was one of the least harem-y harems I've ever seen. And though I think there's definitely better harem shows out there with, this was a very, very enjoyable one and is definitely within my top 5 harem shows. And funnily enough, you said this was almost above Charlotte on your list. It was almost above Charlotte on my list too. I think I have Charlotte at number 6 and this at number 7.
Like I said, I think on a good episode, if I were just to judge it by the way it ended, I was infinitely more satisfied with the I would say Jitsuwa's finale than I was with Charlotte.
I was infinitely more satisfied with Jitsuwa's finale.
Yeah.
But that's not saying much. I was satisfied with a lot more finales than.
Well, that's what I've been hearing from Charlotte's ending. It's if you were a fan of Key, then you like the entire series a lot.
If you're not a fan of Key, I'm not a fan of Key, and this Charlotte ended up like it would be right about like an 8.5, and this show's right about the same way. The only difference is you go into Charlotte with a lot of expectations because of its the history of Key and what they've been able to do. I went into Jitsuwa hoping it wouldn't be total freaking garbage. So whereas Charlotte was kind of disappointing week in, week out, this was very much a very, very, very pleasant surprise and much better than I thought it would be.
It's like I was actually going to bring before I sort of to close out the Charlotte talk in between all this stuff, where Charlotte just like gradually, it's like I was just waiting for it to end. Jitsu wa Watashi wa ever since like episode 7 has been really solid.
Yeah, up to
And like I
episode
said,
7, it's like
I'm with
episode 7,
you.
it's about like a 7. It's like this is fine. This is enjoyable. I'm getting a few chuckles here.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 8 to 12, each and every episode is excellent. So,
Yeah. And I'm pretty much with you. I would recommend Jitsu wa Watashi wa to probably anybody because like I said, it has its sticks sometimes to cliches, but it still manages to be funny regardless.
yeah.
And even if you've seen the manga and you're sort of put off by the art style, I think it works.
They clean up the art style a lot.
Cleans up the art style and it works to the charm of the show, or works to make the show all the more charming.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta say, I loved what's her name, the vampire girl's dad in the last episode. I thought he was hilarious because he's essentially her, but just this imposing, vampire dad. He's like a giant compared to his wife, but he pretty much acts exactly like his daughter. He's like an idiot or sort of clueless sometimes about stuff.
Yeah, no, and like with the characters, everything of this show, I will definitely say this is one of my favorite protagonists of any harem show. They really did a great job with your male lead character, whereas most harems have just a nothing character. He was really a decent character on his own and didn't need to be defined purely by the female characters the way, say, Raku and Nizukoi is. But and even like the actual harem characters themselves in this, they weren't near as good as like say Saikano or Nizukoi's female characters, but they were still very entertaining.
Mm.
Every character in the show made me laugh several times and had a point to being there, and I ended up enjoying. So yeah, this was high on my list for the season. It was very enjoyable. I'd love to see a second season, and I can also say I really have to commend the animation studio for the changes they made, because I've been reading the manga recently, and there were a few things they added that weren't in the manga that were actually very, very good changes and actually helped. It might have been just to give it a more satisfying single season, but it made I think I actually prefer the anime to the manga of the series.
Like I said, it works. I would say this is essentially the underdog show of the series, underdog series of the season for me.
Yeah,
because I just I expected so little of it. I checked it out on Deliberate Assumptions. Like I've seen this manga in various places, and let's just see how it is.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Overlord was also an underdog for me, but I expected more out of Overlord than I expected out of Jitsuwa. And I think I was just more surprised by Jitsuwa, even though Overlord's better. So I would say this is my underdog of the season, and I'm really glad it was as good as it was.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else about Jitsuwa Watashi wa?
Not really. Just watch it if it sounds like your show.
All right. Then moving on, we will go on to Ora Monogatari, or My Love Story. So I'll just hit this off right out the bat. This is easily my favorite romance series of all time. Just straight up the best romance series I've ever watched, bar none. It managed to hit everything that I wanted it to. Like, it had a cute couple. It didn't go off in any stupid direction with dancing around the issue of, hey, they actually love each other. It gets out of the way right in the first 3 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
It constantly progresses with interesting characters outside the main couple, but at the same time, the couple themselves are enjoyable to watch. Just everything about the series is great.
Mm-hmm.
I really can't dispute anything you said. Week in, week out, the show was enjoyable to watch. It put a smile on my face. It was really cute. It, hit its emotional strengths. All the characters were really fun. I think Suna, surprisingly, and I usually hate that style of character, is one of my favorite characters of the season.
He's just the best friend character ever.
Right? And this series did not stumble once. Everything it tried to do was done exactly as I wanted it to be done. Everything, it hit every note I wanted it to hit. And it was like, this is just a damn good series. I don't think it did anything like super like jaw-droppingly
Yeah.
fantastic, but
Yeah.
everything it did really well. This is one of those weird cases where I can't fault the series like for anything. I think it did everything it wanted to do well. It told its story well. It feels satisfactory. It had a great finale. That last little arc and everything was wonderful.
I
So
actually, now I think, I do kind of feel like the last arc went by a bit too fast, but otherwise the entire
maybe,
series,
but I can't even say
yeah,
that. I
yeah, that's the thing. It's just so minor in the grand scheme of things that I can't even really complain that much about the series.
Hmm.
It's just, honestly, if anyone wanted a recommendation for a romance series, I would immediately point them to this. Like, it's just
yeah.
that good of a series.
Oh yeah, I don't watch a lot of romance series like outside of harem, but of what I've seen, this is my favorite. Just because the reasons you said it gets to the chase and it's a series that focuses actually on the idea of the romance rather than getting to that point. And everything
Yeah.
it does about it, it feels realistic, it feels relatable, and it's good and fun to watch.
Like it's definitely a show that if you wanted to tell somebody if you want like a romance without all the frustration of watching a romance anime, it's this is a series to watch, and I would honestly say it's probably like we still have a season to go. But right now, it is a strong contender for my series of the year.
Yeah, I'd definitely say it's probably in the contenders list for myself as well, though there is One Punch Man in the next season.
Hmm.
Eh, I mean,
Yeah, I don't think I like it as much as you guys, but
yeah,
it's still like right up
yeah.
there in my top
I
10.
mean,
I still
yeah.
really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and even the its grasp of romance, it's not entirely directed on the main characters. Like you see romance in the other characters as well. Like in some aspects, like how Takio get and Yamata or
Hmm.
Yamato
Yamato. Oh yeah.
Yamato.
Ah, whatever.
Basically, they get their friends together, and hey, they actually hit it off. So there is that. But then there's the white-haired chick and Suna, and it's like sometimes people just don't fall in love with don't return affection, just can't return affection to other people.
I really love that arc. That was something you see so rarely, and not even just anime, but in media
Yeah,
entirely. And it's such a realistic thing. That was almost definitely my favorite arc of the season.
yeah,
That was so well done. Like I said, this show kind of went into almost every aspect that this sort of romance would be involved in, and showed them
and
all in a realistic
it
and relatable
yeah,
light.
and it deals with it all really really well. Like,
Hmm.
and it just has fun characters altogether. Like Takio himself, he's just this big, brutish, uh, uh, muscly guy, but he's just such a lovable character.
Hmm.
And
Oh
then,
no, every
Yeah.
yeah,
character in the entire show was pretty likable, except for the characters who weren't supposed to be. And even then, there was no not a there was not a single contemptible character in the show.
Well, besides the guy at the end,
I don't think
whatever
he
his
was
name
even
is.
contemptible. I think
Well,
he
he
filled
was
the role very well,
he's more
and
so
he
just
was
an
still a
idiot, I
good
guess.
guy. It's not like he was a total asshole.
Yeah, I just thought of him like he's this 21-year-old going after what, like a 15, 16-year-old. How old
Yeah,
are
yeah,
they?
I didn't even think
yeah.
about it that way. But then again, Japan.
Yeah,
Yeah, there have been worse things.
yeah.
You know,
But
out
I'm
of
just saying, like
Japan,
this the
we
entire
could have
time,
got him
like
going after Takeo's sister.
I think a lot. Oh God, man.
I like how it took you a moment there.
It took like I was like in the middle of saying something and then it just took like a second to register what you just said. I'm like, oh man, because I was like trying to like get what I said out and then just sort of like, caught up in what you said.
But,
But like I was gonna say, I think the one reason why I didn't like the character in the last arc was because I had expected that kind of arc at some point in the show, and I was sort of angry at first that they chose it to be the last arc. But that's the thing, like the one thing this show did an awful lot of and did it well is that the arcs were never more than 2 or 3 episodes, and you never really disliked how they wrapped it up.
yeah, I mean they're always well done. Even if there's something you don't like about them, they always satisfy at the end.
Hmm.
Just altogether, I'd have to give it a 10 personally. Like it's definitely my favorite romance series, and if it wasn't Like, I usually typically separate shows, like if there are two core series and they carry over, I typically only associate them with the season before, but it's I'd say it's tied with Overlord for my favorite series of this season. It's just really hard to tell. But honestly, I definitely recommend it to anybody who's wanting a romance series or just a really fun series and just a really good series, honestly.
Hmm.
Yeah, I totally agree. I give it like a just a solid 8. It didn't blow me away enough to hit me higher, but it was such an enjoyable series that, an 8's still a really good score in my book. So, yeah, I'd still definitely say this is recommendable to anyone looking for a romance.
Yeah, I don't know if I can assign a score yet. I'd probably give it a 9 if I'm forced to give it a score. But I will say it's been one of my favorite series of this year so far. And it started and continued in two pretty strong seasons.
Yeah.
So, like, I'll say if there's a weakness to Oda Monogatari's, sometimes the repetition of certain gags,
Yeah, I mean,
like the whole "I love her" gag.
well,
Yeah.
Like it's funny, but it gets to a level it's like when it's like every episode, you start getting a little tired of it.
well, yeah,
Hmm.
but it definitely matches the characters themselves, so I wouldn't really complain too much about it myself, but I can see where you're coming from. It definitely there are definitely those moments where it's just kind of repeating, but at the same time, to me, that's basically Takeo's character. He really loves her, and
Hmm.
so the gag fits to me.
Yeah, like I said, I can't find a single legitimate complaint against this series. It was rock solid at everything it tried to do.
Yeah.
It wasn't pretty much like feel like an injection of sugar onto anybody.
Hmm.
It's just really sweet, almost all the time.
In fact, I think my only complaint against if and it's not even complaining against the show, I think maybe I got mellowed a bit more on it because I would always watch a show right before Umaru, and then Umaru would be the only thing that could be cuter than it.
Hmm.
Yeah. But anyways, I guess moving on from my love story, Gate. So, I'm I'm not entirely sure how. I guess you can go first with this one, Colin.
Gate
Man,
is a show that definitely it definitely didn't keep up the quality it promised from its first few episodes, but I don't think it ever got to a point where it was unwatchable or even bad. I still ended up giving it an 8, but it was one of my lower 8s of the season. Um, I still really like the world and the kind of realistic approach it's taking to this very fantasy setting and everything, but it's kind of started to drag a bit. That said, its ending is very clearly setting up the next season, and the next season looks to ramp things up again. So it feels like we're, this is a planned 2 season show, and the problem with it is it started very high, and then we've kind of got this lull, this just kind of lag before it starts its second high again, and that's just where we kind of have ended on.
Hmm.
So it's one of those weird situations where you have to score the first season as its own thing, but it kind of isn't its own thing in a weird way.
It definitely started for me falling off a little towards the end. It's like became sort of like Gangsta to me on a Sunday that I just didn't want to watch it sometimes. But like, and I actually sort of have a bit of a hard time remembering what else happened besides the dark elf chick in the last episode. But yeah, it's pretty much what you said. Was set up. You can't really make a full judgment on the show because you could tell it was set up to be more than just one
Hmm.
season.
I never actually finished it. I think I dropped it after the, the basically the fan servicey episode.
Yeah, yeah, you
Yeah.
really didn't like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a. I definitely say I dropped it more of just my personal taste because I don't really like it when it's like it takes a lot for a series that changes between two different, very drastically different themes, and I I would have liked it if it went stronger in either one of its themes. Just just felt like it was. teetering between them, and it just didn't really be. It wasn't as enjoyable as I was wanting it to be.
Well, like I said, I think when it got to that kind of, I guess if we take this as a 24 episode series, when it got to that mid-series lull, you got a lot more kind of just the not serious filler aspects that aren't near as present when, towards the beginning of the series, where we had the invasion into Japan and then the reverse counteroffensive and then them defending the city from the bandits and everything. And it was a very serious series at that point. And I think we're going to get right back into that at the start of the second season because JJU hadn't seen it yet. But what the end of the first season does is set up the situation where this dark elf has come to the Japanese to try to get help fighting a fire dragon that's trying to wipe out her village, and she can't. They can't do it because it's in another country that they don't have negotiations with, and they don't want to start a war with this other country where the dark elves are. So the idea seems to be that the only person she's going to be able to talk into helping her in this situation is Itami, and they're going to have to go with a small squad without much munitions to fight a fire dragon. So it's going to be it's going to really step up the pace almost assuredly. But right now, like I said, it feels like we're in a mid-season lull for a season that's been split into 2 seasons.
Yeah, the thing is, if it went more in a lighter-hearted comedic sort of way, I'd be fine with that. Like it's already in that direction. Like if it was in that direction, it would just be a slightly more military-focused version of, say, Outbreak Company. But if it went more on the serious side, I'd enjoyed that a lot more as well because, hey, it's a lot more serious take on the genre. But as it stands in between, it can't really decide where it wants to go, and it's just going straight in the middle, and it's just not keeping a real identity to it. It's just flip-flopping all over the place for me. Like I said, I haven't actually finished. I never finished the first season. I just kind of dropped it, and I don't know if I'll ever go back to it or not. I'll just have to see.
We'll let you know if season 2 looks like something you'd enjoy.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, one thing that sort of threw me from the show too was the change to Saturday.
That was a bit off-putting.
Because I sort of got used to it being part of my Friday anime. But yeah.
I can't really do much of a review on it because I've dropped it and I only really seen a portion of it, so I'm not going to really assign a rating to it, but I just will say I really do wish it had either just chosen a direction or just developed one side more than the other.
Mm-hmm.
How about you guys?
Like I said, it's a low 8 for me, and that's mostly because of how good the beginning of the series was, that it really did start to mellow out towards the end of the season, but also taking into account what the series is. I like to try to judge things off what they are. It's setting up its second season right now. And so it's hard for me to fault its kind of lackluster conclusion when I know exactly why it's that way. Mm-hmm. It's not like Gangsta where we have no clue if Gangsta's going to get a second season. Probably not. So it's a lot easier to fault that huge open-ended crazy stuff than it is for Gate because we know season 2's coming. It's already got a date, So it's much harder to fault an open-ended conclusion when it's not even really a conclusion.
Right. I'd probably put it at 7 where it finished, for the first season. It really depends on where it winds up as a full series. And that's when I'm probably going to make my actual judgment on the series.
Yeah. Well, anything else about Gate?
Not really. I think it's, put off any more judgment until season 2 gets rolling and we see where it's going.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I guess moving on, we shall talk about Food Wars! Yay! This is probably one of the better ecchi food shows ever created.
Probably one of the better ecchi food shows ever created. Probably.
I don't know, there's a whole...
Such a robust genre.
Yeah, there's that one shaft show, something graffiti.
Gafuku
Graffiti, and...
The first 2 episodes of that were boring. The only redeeming factor was, it was pretty much the preview theme that they did. It was really cute and catchy. But that's like the only thing.
Yeah, that's very high praise when you're praising only the preview theme. But anyways,
I'm certain for certain crowds it's a fine show, but I can't really say. There was really nothing there for me.
But yeah, Food Wars, just oh boy, that was a really good series and is totally going to get a season announcement sometime.
Yeah, like I said, there's no way we're not getting a second season of this, at least, if not 3 or 4 or 5. When you look at your average Shonen Jump anime, sure, you get a few that are like 24 episodes or maybe 36 or so, but the majority are like 70 to 200 episodes. And the Food War's been very popular. There's merchandise for it everywhere. It's already getting a few OVAs off of like Jump Festa and stuff. This is going to get a continuation. There's no doubt in my mind. I think this is more likely to get a continuation than any other show this season besides like Gate.
So Alex, you read the original material. So how do you feel?
I only read up to the beginning of the hotel arc.
Okay. Well, as far as that is concerned, how do you feel it's stacked up to that point?
It was a perfect adaptation. If I had read more of it, if I had read the series in full or more than what was shown, or more than what was in the first season, I probably would be praising it as much as I wound up praising the Prison School adaptation. Because, mind you, this 2 JC Staff series that have been excellent adaptations of what they did and what was done in the manga. I actually argue from that first episode of Shokugeki no Soma was much more crazy than that chapter in the manga, because I don't remember the meat juices coming out of their body parts.
I thought it was going their body parts.
I think it's going. I think there's one scene where it's going out, and then one scene going in.
Oh yeah.
Either way.
Meat juices.
When I got to that part, I paused it and I asked my brother, because he knew he's actually read more of the series or actually keeps up with it. I asked him, "Do you remember that happening?" And he wasn't sure. So from what I read, it was pretty much.
I would say starting out, it's a lot more heavier on the ecchi stuff. But
I'd say it was starting out.
Yeah.
But then it really cuts it back.
Yeah, it cuts it back and focuses more on like the funner parts of the series, like the funner characters and the arcs and the delicious looking food. I mean, it still has plenty of fun ecchi moments, just over the top fan service that it. Let's just say I have these 4 rules of what I want from what I'm willing to accept from fan service, and it passes all 4 with flying colors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
well, for starters, it's not too serious of a series. Like it.
No, really?
No. 2, it's equal opportunistic. Anything it does to a female character, it's willing to do to a male character.
Ishiki.
Yes, Ishiki and his
naked apron. That butt jiggle at the
the butt
at the end.
Yeah.
At the end was so ridiculous because he's just like going back and forth. It's just like wobbling.
And of course,
to
that moves on to my 3rd. It's fun. All the stuff is funny. It's humorous. The fan service itself is humorous. And I can't quite remember what the 4th thing was, but I know it passed it. My mind's just blanking on it. But the fan service itself,
it's like it saved most of the fan service for the way it ended, because you had plenty of the moments with the judges at it
definitely started it out and ended it with a lot more heavier fan service than it did in the majority of the series.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure if they get another season, it'll be somewhat the same way. They'll start it off heavily with fan service, then get on to the middle, and then have a ending with much more fan services.
Well, the show seems to very heavily throttle its I guess you would call it its intensity, where it gets to those climactic moments where it just goes nuts on everything. The crazy action comparisons, the fan service, the dramatic music, the animation. Like I said, this show to me is the spiritual successor to iShield 21, and that was another series that did the same thing. That it takes something ordinary and everyday, and it uses its it uses its presentation to drum up the just drama of the aspect to the maximum.
And well, the food in the series, it just looks so freaking delicious.
Oh yeah, and once again, another comparison to Eye Shield. One of the co-writers for the manga apparently is a actual chef. So they have him come in. All the recipes and food stuff in the show is true to life. This is all true, actual food stuff. So and Eye Shield did much the same thing. They didn't have a football player on the writing staff or anything, but there's like a whole editorials in the manga where they went to Texas to study football stuff for Eye Shield's manga. And so everything they do in Eye Shield, all the football moves and stuff, is actual stuff you'll see in real football. They don't just, make stuff up. But it's all the presentation that makes it crazy and over the top.
Yeah. Yeah, the Food Wars, just the characters are fun, the story arcs are always engaging at the very least, and Soma himself he's kind of like a mix of a bit too cocky and at the same time enjoyably so.
Right. He fits that just spot where he definitely got the skill and he can back up what he says, but he still has a way to go and room to grow, and he knows it. But he's not going to let any it hamper who he is or his confidence.
I mean, it's anytime he's in a competition or anything, it's fun to see him win and it's fun to see him lose, because when he loses, he usually learned from it.
Mm-hmm. I really liked how they did that in the last episode, by the way. I thought that was one of, if not the best final episodes for the season. Just the huge climactic battle, and it's where he lost, but arguably so, and against the other guys, like his signature style of cooking.
Yeah, and I liked how they were like with the judges. Like 3 of them had different scores than the other 2 for each of the dishes, and they were kind of fighting over at the end.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, look at how good he is. He's actually, he's forced the judges to be at each other's throat about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but once again, he still lost, and he knows he lost, and he's upset about it. And I think that's what makes him a more endearing character than just he could be just another genius, cocky asshole character. But because he doesn't win all the time, and because he knows his failures and learns from them, it's much more endearing to him.
Yeah, and then there's all the supporting cast as well. Like there's
supporting cast is so good.
Yeah, like Nikumi and Ishiki and just all the cast.
And I mean, those are the major, more defined ones. But even the characters that we've seen very little of, Alice and Rio, the witch girl, like. We've got a lot of, and this is another very contemporary thing to Ice Shield. We've got a lot of characters that have just been introduced, but they're such over the top and memorable personalities that you already kind of like them, even though we've seen very little of them. And this is very clearly, and the manga is obviously still going everything. This is going to be a long running series. If you just want to compare it to Ice Shield again, I have 38 volumes of Ice Shield sitting on my bookcase. It's a long series, and Shokugeki no Soma feels very, very similar. We're going to see all of these characters fleshed out and given backstories, given they're all going to end up like Hayama is. They're all going to end up as interesting characters with their own personalities, their own drives, their own reasons to be there and to fight.
I mean, they've already established that a lot with the different characters, like
right.
The one brother, who was,
both the Aldini brothers are
the
interesting.
Aldini brothers, like how they set up his character in his scene against the judges, like how they sort of show his backstory and build him up to where, hey, he's sort of, at first he sort of saw himself in the shadow of his brother, but after a while after his brother basically like said to him like, hey, if we're going to win, we're going to win together regardless of what actually happens.
Yeah. And that was like, what, maybe 5 minutes of the episode was focusing on him? And look how well they already defined that character in just 5 minutes. A character who had almost nothing the rest of the season.
Yeah, pretty much the entire point before that, he was just, hey, that overweight guy who...
Yeah,
and at
his
the end,
weird brother.
yeah,
And
and
in
then
5 minutes, they made him an interesting character that you want to see more of.
yeah,
Mhm.
and yeah, it definitely has a lot of open plot points that are definitely going to go more along, like how what's her face, the main tsundere yellow-haired chick who is
Oh, Nakumi.
Nakumi? No, not her. Nakumi's the meat girl.
Oh, I know what
Oh,
you're talking
Arena.
about.
Arena. Yeah, Arena, like how...
The Vegeta.
the Vegeta. Like how
We have
Arena...
two yellow-haired yandere. Well, not yanderes, but
Tsunderes.
tsundere. We've got some yanderes in there too, just not yellow-haired.
No. But basically how she knows Soma's dad, but doesn't know he's Soma's
Yeah, and how
dad.
interesting is that going to be when
Yeah.
that bomb
Oh,
hits?
that bomb.
Can you just imagine that situation?
It's like, ew, no, why? The person I admire and the person I absolutely hate. Why? But yeah, the series is just altogether really wonderful, and I'd be more surprised if it didn't get additional seasons.
Oh, most definitely.
Overall, I'd probably rate it a 9 personally. I mean, it hits everything well and it's really enjoyable. And if you want a show with a lot of over the top stuff and a lot of good food, I definitely recommend it.
Yeah.
On a show to make you feel hungry.
Yes,
No, this.
I've spent money going at a bit overpriced restaurants simply because I was hungry when I watched this show, and they showed good food, and I couldn't resist.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. This is another 9 for me, and for me, I think this is probably my favorite anime of the last couple seasons. It's been just a hell of a lot of fun. You know, it's everything it tries to do, you can tell what it's trying to do, and it does it all very, very well. You know, it likes to throw you for a loop every once in a while, just pull something crazy out. I still have to say, the only reason it's not a 10 for me is because I think it lagged a bit in this final arc. I think that was one of the slower parts of the season. That said, I completely understand why. It was setting up, like we said, we got development for Aldini in 5 minutes, and it did that with like 6 to 8 characters. It set up half the major characters going forward in the series in within 3 to 4 episodes, while giving us a little bit more of a look at who, you know, A, how much Megumi has grown, B, where Soma still stands. You know, it showed us a bit more of Nakumi, a bit more of Arena. You know, it's giving us, you know, it was 4 episodes where they established what another show would spend 12 to 15 episodes establishing. And it's still not like it wasn't entertaining. They were still fun episodes to watch. It just on the heels of that fantastic summer arc where you get just the crazy shit of Megumi having to do the Shokugeki against the, you know, the professional chef, and Soma having to watch, and then the, you know, bomb with his dad and the bomb with him, you know, being so disappointed when he doesn't beat professional chef and all that. That arc was one of the best arc I've ever seen in anime. So this arc off of those hills felt just a bit flat. So I think if I had to judge just this season by itself, just these last 12 episodes, it would be more of it towards an 8. But when you consider that the first season was probably closer to a 10, they balance out to a very, very solid 9 for me. And it's still, the whole thing's been so enjoyable. I'm going to watch the hell out of season 2 when it comes. If,
Yeah.
you know,
And
if we,
and
for
keep in
some
mind,
reason,
people,
don't, I'm
yeah.
going to go read the manga.
Yeah,
You know,
that's definitely if it doesn't happen, we're going to read the manga. But
yeah,
keep in mind, everyone, nothing has been announced yet as far as we're recording, but it's
it's just one of those, you kind of derive it from what it is. It's, like I said, it's a jump manga. It's a very popular jump manga. It's a very popular jump manga with a lot of, you know, merchandising. And a lot less popular jump mangas have gotten a lot more episodes. So I don't see how this couldn't get a sequel.
yeah.
You know?
How about you, Alex?
I'd probably give it a 9, like you guys. It's like it really never stopped being fun throughout.
Yes, it sounds like this is our first 9s across the board show.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so Food Wars. If you aren't turned off by crazy over the top
Fan service.
nonsense, go watch it because
Yeah,
it's
nonsense,
amazing.
yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a crazy show, so if you're not into crazy shows, you'll probably want to avoid it, but otherwise, it's just straight up fantastic.
I wouldn't even say that. I would say there's a few episodes that you're going to have to deal with.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
yeah,
those
that's...
episodes are near the beginning. The first 2 or 3 episodes are the craziest. Besides the last episode, are the craziest.
Yeah, besides the fact that there's tentacle porn with food.
Like episode 1, but once you get past that, it starts focusing so much more on the character development and the actual cooking and the action aspects that all the ecchi and crazy shit like that starts to fall off the edge. And one of the things I can say about the beginning of the show, which I really like, is that it set it up to be so crazy from the beginning. You don't bat an eye at the less crazy, but still really crazy shit further on. Like, in some shows, their school owns an entire resort village that employs world-class chefs that they go have their summer battle camp at. And it's like, in a lot of shows, that'd be nuts. In Food Wars, we already saw episode 1. It's not nuts anymore. We don't bat an eye.
Nope.
No?
I didn't even think
The
about
show,
that until
their
now.
lackluster arc was essentially a tournament arc where they've got like food industry professionals coming and they've got a stadium filled with these people. And like in any other show, in like Fairy Tale or something, the tournament arcs are some of the coolest, most off the wall stuff. That's comparatively a low point in Shokugeki no Soma. The show just it sets you up for what it is so well that you stop being surprised until it wants you to be surprised. And I think that works super well in its favor.
Yeah, definitely gotta say it's just definitely very worth watching, and definitely higher up from the last 2 seasons for me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, moving on, Shimoneta. So how about that love juice?
Yeah,
In the cookies. And in the water
pretty much
bottle.
alongside Prison School's sweat sound effects, one of the most disgusting aspects to come out of the summer season.
Honestly, the scene where basically right after the point where you first see Anna going all crazy, and then the next episode it's like, okay, what was all of that? I'm sure it was nothing. And then she brings out the love juice cookies or love nectar.
Yeah.
And then that point on, it was just completely balls out crazy.
That's pretty much
Shimoneta is one of those shows that it was like a 7 elevated to an 8 because of a few characters and a few nuts hilarious moments.
Yeah. Like right off when it started, it's like, oh, okay, this is pretty enjoyable. It's basically Serokai Kundomo with some Fahrenheit 451 mixed in. Oh wait, what's going on? Why is Anna in his room? Why is she taking off his underwear? What's happening? Okay, that was a crazy episode. Now, what's happening now? Okay. Wait, why is there a warning at the start of this episode? Wait, what's happening? Why are they eating those cookies? What? that moment right there is just honestly the defining scene of that series.
It really was.
Love Nectar is just overall
it's
the
straight up a
takeaway
meme
from the
at this
series.
point.
Yeah.
It's the meme of the series. It's just
Mm-hmm.
everything past that point is just straight up crazy and bonkers and very different from the first couple of episodes.
Yeah.
I mean, the entire series is enjoyable if for no other reason than how freaking bonkers it could be with its characters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it had a lot of funny moments and enjoyable moments, but what really defined it was just how freaking ludicrous it could find itself being.
Right.
Mm.
And I know I personally really enjoyed just the overall premise of it being just this lampoon against Japan's morality laws.
Yeah, that's also really interesting is how much it likes its setting and how much it sets it up, and then what it's actually trying to say. And then when you have this ludicrous stuff that kind of matches what it's saying.
Mm-hmm.
Like kind of matches to its points at least. Like the ludicrous character Anna, who is basically
Exaggeration.
extreme exaggeration of innocence to the point of not knowing what you're doing is wrong. Like that's basically what they're trying to say in their they're trying to say that hey, maybe not be as these laws might not be so well as you think they might be, like this whole morality thing, or the extreme morality part where hey, having dirty stuff and just sexual stuff in general, it might be a good idea to have people somewhat educated on this and not just be stupidly absent-minded about it.
Yeah.
At least that's what it seemed. That's what it was felt like it was going towards. It definitely felt like it matched that with what it was showing, even if what it was showing was so over the top you couldn't quite take it seriously.
It was very much kind of the South Park effect, I believe, where it was nuts, blown out over the top, but it every once in a while you still remember, it's actually got a message behind all this ludicrous.
And the most ironic, or I'm not sure if ironic's the right word, but the most amusing thing about the message is that they actually wound up getting shit from the
Yes,
Japanese censorship groups.
But look at that! Look how well it worked.
Yes.
Yeah, so
That's still
Shimoneta, I think, was definitely a success with what it set out to do, and it was also a very enjoyable show in the process. And if I had to fault the show, strangely enough, I think my biggest fault would be that it turned Anna into the most enjoyable character, but in doing so made her, took her away from being the love interest. Which to me is like, no, she's no, change it back.
No, your wife was gone.
Ayumi, or whatever her name, Ayane, what was her name?
Ayane,
the main girl?
I think. Ayane?
Yeah, she's boring in comparison now.
Yes,
that was your own fumble, was that it made Anna too enjoyable.
Yes, the character who prances around screaming innuendos in nothing but a
veg
curtain
with panties on her face became the more boring love interest. Shimoneta is the only show that could possibly pull that off.
And of course, there's a character who is literally a dick.
Oh yeah, literally a dick. And then Goriki.
Oh, Goriki.
It really turned out the gags on him and just him wearing his sister's underwear. And just They provided a distraction for.
I suppose
last
Goriki
episode.
also sort of counts as the completely oblivious character, but he doesn't go quite as
not
out
quite
there.
As ridiculous as Anna, but
I'd probably give it a 9 myself. Like, I just enjoyed it so much that I definitely say I can see it getting a lower 8, but I just enjoyed what it was trying to do so much that I'd definitely give it a 9. And yeah, if you don't like more sexualized stuff, you should probably stay away from this, because it does a lot of really heavily sexualized stuff, and doesn't shy away from showing some certain fluids. Let's just say that.
Oh yeah, this is not the show for anybody squeamish, but
yeah, squeamish.
yeah, but yeah, like I said, for me, I think it was just too many lower kind of downtime episodes for me to give it any higher than an 8. Too many episodes where I watched, I'm like, well, that was a thing. And then I really was not a big fan of the final episode. It felt more like an OVA than an actual conclusion.
Yeah.
It was still a good 8 for me. It was very enjoyable. It really elevated itself when it had a chance. And I will say episode 6 is probably the hardest I've laughed at an episode of a TV show in a long time.
Which one was episode 6 again?
God, that was I'm having trouble remembering right off the bat. It was when they were making the sex. I can say that.
Was it when they were making the sex toys?
Oh yes.
When they were making the sex toys which is the one where she's wearing the vibrator around her neck as the brooch.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god, I laughed so fucking hard
at that. And of course, at the end of it, they were showing you how to make a sex toy, and they had that.
Yes, that was like, I haven't laughed that hard in an episode of anime in a long time. That one episode's a 10 episode. That's enough to get it an 8 right there.
And of course, they had that one pool that's usually used in Japanese porn in the background.
I'd probably give it an 8 for the same reasons that Colin gives it an 8. I didn't mind the finale. It's just I felt the episode before felt more like a finale than what they actually wound up going with. And I do sort of wonder. I'm not sure how it did sales wise or how it's going to do sales wise. but they showed at the end 2 characters that are in
Yeah,
the light
yeah,
novel. So I'm wondering
yeah.
if they plan a second season
Well,
sometime down the road.
I've not actually read the material, but do those characters actually pop up in the first couple of novels that the current series is
I
has
don't know.
used?
I think from what I've seen about it, it seems like they come up later. Because the one with the glasses, she's actually from like England, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, I think they come to the school or they get introduced I don't think they're part of the first arcs. I think they eventually are new to the become new people to the people already in the series.
Yeah. Well, I did like how they showed them as, hey, they were the 2 people in the dog suits in that basically Mormon bubble censorship sort of thing that they always do at the last episode for some of the characters. But, yeah. But yeah, overall, definitely an enjoyable little series, but definitely avoid it if you're squeamish to more sexual stuff, because it doesn't shy
If
away from.
anything offends you at all, this probably isn't the series for you.
Yeah.
And we'll get to another one of that kind of series a little bit later too.
But before that, we shall move on to Charlotte.
If anything at all, no. No. Charlotte's not an offensive series. Uh, Charlotte is just, if I had to sum up Charlotte in a single sentence, I would call it pacing issues series.
Yeah, pretty
It
much.
was a show that really, really did a lot very, very well. It, came out and it had a lot going for it. It established some very good characters. It established an interesting world. It just it had pacing issues. Just
Mm,
either it would pull stuff from nowhere
nowhere.
on you, just like, well, that was a surprise and not really in a great way. It would, just stuff would just either it would be slow one episode, then going full speed the next episode. Some stuff would feel rushed, some stuff would feel drawn out.
Mm,
Um, it it was constantly throwing me for loops, but not in the way Shokugeki no Shoma was, where I was like, wow, this is jaw dropping. It'd be like, sure, Charlotte,
I'll
yeah,
say
let's go with that.
a lot of the twists or a lot of those like story moments that came short really just didn't have an impact sometimes. You're just like, okay,
Right.
you're just trying to figure out like, okay, where did that come from? Or for example, like in the last episode when, shows him going around, the world to get the powers and you see the gradual effect it has on him. That had like so little impact on me. It's like,
Right. It was really cool and everything, and I liked the writing direction. And I will say I definitely had more of an emotional effect to that than I did to anything in Angel Beats, because I did end up caring a lot more for the characters in Charlotte than Angel Beats. But it was still just such an oddly paced, rushed portion of the series that you could have done multiple episodes on that whole part of the series, but all in one. It was just like this weird, oddly paced montage.
eh, and just I don't know. It's like I know by the time it was finished, I just sort of I was like in the episode, and I guess so the end of the when the main girl when he can't remember anything. To
Uh,
me, it's like it never really had much of an effect on me. Like
no, like
I'll say that like the music is what sort of helped the scene, but to me it sort of felt like it's like okay, now get emotional to this guy. This is what this part was meant for.
the music was good. I think it really did a pretty good job with most of the major characters. So, well, really, Ayumi, Tamori, and Yu. And I would say Yu is one of my. I really really liked him as a main character. You saw so much character growth and dynamism in that character that
Mm,
I think that was the best thing the series did, was how good he was as a main character. But yeah, you're right. Otherwise, just nothing really impacted me that much about the series. It never grabbed me by the balls and pulled me in and made me really care. It did a lot better in that aspect than than Angel Beats, because I actually cared about at least 2 or 3 of the characters, but there was no point where I was ever like, oh fuck, where's the next episode? There was no
yeah.
point like Like in Food Wars, just go back to like the episode where you're about to fight the main when he's about to have the Shokugeki against the the professional chef, and he's like, no, I'm going to find my Megumi. I was like, holy fuck. Like, whoa. Or Overlord with like, just a fucking, by the way, I'm a huge hypocrite episode ends. It's like, whoa. Like those were just those moments were so major. There was never a moment like that in Charlotte, which made me just go, fuck, hell, like, yeah. There was no moment that made me go, ha. There were just moments that made me sit back and go, well, didn't see that coming.
Pretty much.
Just with no reaction. That all said, I think we're a bit more negative on the series just because of how much better it was supposed to be, I guess, based off its, maker, its preseason hype.
To be fair, like we mentioned before, if it's more of a, if you actually like key stuff,
I would say by no
yes, if you are a big fan of key stuff, it's a much more. You generally like the series a lot more. It definitely seems like a series aimed at key fans.
Mm-hmm.
But as like as far as key stuff goes, I've watched Angel Beats. I played Planetarian. I think there's one other key series I've watched. I don't remember off the top of my head. But I am not one of these people who's watched Clan Ad and Air and Little Busters and all that stuff. So I went in there fresh as just your average viewer, and based off the reputation it had simply going into the series, I have to say I was kind of disappointed. But that's because I went in expecting a 9 and ended up getting a mid-range 8. Whereas, say the opposite of Jitsu Watashi, where I went in expecting like maybe a 5 or 6, ended up getting a mid-range 8. So I'm much more amicable towards one than the other simply because of that, impressive to, non-impressive ratio.
Yeah, and I would almost say like some of the rhetoric I'm using, if anybody pays attention to the show, it's probably similar to the rhetoric I use towards something like Plastic Memories, but like don't get the wrong idea. I thought this show was a lot better than that. It's just it could have been so much better had they did things differently.
Oh yeah, Charlotte was a lot better than Plastic Memories, but yeah, it's definitely a show that with just a bit better pacing to give its major moments more of an emotional depth, I think it could have been a much better series for everyone and not just key fans.
Yeah.
Well, I guess let's see. Have you both already rated it?
Like I said, it's right there with like Jitsu wa Watashi wa for me, right about like an 8.5. Even with all my complaints are mostly based off the fact that I went in expecting a 9, and so it's still a very good series. I think it's still a solid series, especially if you're a key fan. Definitely watch it. Even if you're not a key fan, it's enjoyable depending on what you're trying to see, and it does have one of the best protagonists I've ever seen in an anime. But it's not a 9. It's it's a solid show. It's no instant classic in my book.
I'd pretty much just give it an 8 probably.
Well, then I guess if you have nothing else to say about Charlotte, you guys can move on to Prison School.
Now, Peral, you take the floor, Colin.
What a fucking good show. Prison Schools ended up being really, really, really good. And it's definitely not a show for everyone, like you hinted at earlier. No, if you're at all easily to offend with anything having to do with like fan service, this is a fan service show. This is like apparently it and Monster Musume have been having like a fan service war on Nico Nico in Japan, releasing uncensored frames and like uncensored episodes and stuff. This is a fan service show. That said, this is not a show that is completely defined by its fan service. In fact, I'd say the fan service is a very small aspect of its definition. It's just kind of a side that doesn't hurt the show because the whole show is over the top. The show lives and breathes by the quality of its writing and doing the exact opposite of what Charlotte does, whereas every moment, every twist and turn in Prison School is done fantastically. It's done to the point where it gives you a emotional, it makes your jaw drop with every single twist and turn.
I gotta
it's
say,
it's so well written and directed.
Yeah, I gotta say, just to see the reaction, like every Friday when the show would come out, when he released. I always typed it in on Twitter just to see what the reaction was, and especially in the later episodes, it was just like amazing to see how people reacted to things.
Yeah, and it was definitely a show. Like for me, it was just this odd situation where I was watching like this is fun, this is enjoyable every week, until we got to that episode with Gakuto where he like sacrifices the figure and everything
Uh,
for them all and stuff, and I just stopped for a second. I'm like, this show's really fucking good. I
uh,
give a fuck. I
and that's the thing.
care.
That it really
This
is.
is this is really well written, and it was just
Uh,
like that weird scenario where I kind of expected a monster Musume out of it, where it was like, yeah, this is funny fan service, and it ended
it's
up being a lot more than that.
it is, yeah. That's the thing. When I started reading it, because my brother, whoa, sorry, my brother, my brother is the one. He had originally read it, and I wound up seeing a panel because he had told me about it before, and I was just looking at this one part. It's something in the second arc that I don't want to spoil either.
Hmm.
I was looking at this thing, and I read what was in there. I'm like, this is hilarious, and so I decided to start it, and just like pretty much like immediately I was just sort of amazed by how like what you said, the quality of the writing, and
Yeah,
you know
you
how
don't expect that level of quality of writing out of that subject or
uh,
that style of writing. It's it's just a show that is far better written than it should be, and also I have to say a lot of the humor is very intelligent.
uh,
Like not in subject matter, but in execution.
uh,
And then
oh yeah,
it defines all its characters really well. The story just in it's constantly making you hungry for more. You're always ready for the next episode. It hits. It's one of those shows that simply starts clicking on all cylinders and just is a wild ride to the very end. Super enjoyable. And this is another one I'd say this is right up there in with very likely to get a second season. I you know
I really do hope so, because like I said, there's like so much more. Like I will say, there's actually one character in particular, or you can say multiple characters do get development in the second arc, and like I said,
I have to admit, there's a few characters that are a bit flat out of the first arc. Like we really see almost nothing of Joe. We know he
eh,
likes ants. Like there's
well, that's the
not
thing.
a
Like
lot we're
with
given,
Joe,
but
with Joe, he is more of a support character. You get a lot of more, just overall in the series. Joe, certain aspects of Andre, and until like certain parts of the second season, and or the second arc, and there are people who don't like what happens to Andre during the second arc, and Shingo too. Like he doesn't really get much in the second arc either, but like
he gets a decent amount of play in the
he got
first arc, where I thought he
he
was a pretty decently built character.
yeah, that's the thing. That's up until like he really hasn't had much of a part in the second arc with the,
Hmm.
but but yeah, like I will agree that looking back at it, there are some flat characters, but that is I would say they're supposed to be like more of the supporting characters.
Right, and that's what I took them as, and so it really didn't bother me. And I say they're kind of flat. They fill their role very well.
Mm,
It's not like them being kind of flat hurts the series.
yeah. Like I said, I do wonder if it does get a second season, if it's going to start off, because I believe I told you before that what they sort of just rushed through in the post-credit sequence to show the antagonist of the second arc, or pretty much a tease what happens in the second arc, it sort of cuts out some chapters that sort of build a little bit on the characters, and there's part of the chapter there's part of that like sort of rest arc between the two arcs that actually gives a little bit of a attention to Joe. And there is a sort of a part that's more of a funny thing between Gakuto and Joe in the second arc that I sort of would love to see the reaction to. But trying to think of what else to say. I will ask, what did you think? One moment that I was waiting for almost the entire time in this in the anime was the Hana and Kiyoshi in the pretty much the warden's office.
Hmm.
That entire sequence. I'd like to know what you thought about that.
It was just it was another instance of the show just its writing quality and its direction just being so nuts and just like making such a crazy nutty situation have so much like just and it was honestly so humorous, just giving so much like depth and dramatic intrigue to such a ridiculous situation. And it's doing such a good job of defining Hannah's character and making her extremely complex. Like still fucking insane, but you can kind of see the gears moving in her head, and at the same time not, and it's very interesting. And she honestly towards the end became one of my favorite characters in the show.
Yeah, she pretty much, I will say, consensus. You have a lot of people who really like her character, and she is like pretty much across like fan base one of the favorite characters in the entire series, and that's that says a lot because you do have people who like Mari because she gets a little bit more development in the second arc.
Who's
you have,
that's the vice principal.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, you started to see a bit of her character change, and she was a very well done character even in the first season. But you're starting to see the hints of her dynamism coming forward. So
yeah, but yeah. I'm trying to think of something else. I'm gonna say I would say another aspect that was sort of possibly like one of the more underrated aspects is the soundtrack to the series. Because there was always like something like good playing.
Oh, I love the soundtrack of the series. The opening
also,
and closing are super catchy as well.
And pretty much just also the cast. They did not. Initial trailers, I was like, I'm not sure if these are the right voices, but I was like, it's like, man, especially Hanakana as Hana she was astounding. So I was actually trying to think of something else to ask you about the series, but now I'm just sort of forgetting. Also, what were your what did you think of the last episode and where I left off?
It was one of my more preferable finishes to the series. I thought it wrapped up its arc extremely nicely, but it's very clearly still leaving it open for the like I would say almost inevitable season 2. So I actually really liked the finale. I thought it was very well done. I did not see the twist coming. Yeah, it was a great finish, and just because of how good it was. That's another one. That's my number 4 show this season, right there, and I mean right like below Overlord, and it's another one right at that borderline between an 8 and 9 for me. It's just flip flopping back and forth.
As pretty much as a reader of the manga, I was so happy with how it turned out.
And I've heard it was a really faithful adaptation. So
there were certain parts missing, and like I said, pacing was a concern, like in the first episode, and I would say the post-credit scene. But I say this with bias. I'd probably give it a 9. It was probably one of my favorites. I'd say it's probably my number 2 because I was so happy with it. Just I place it at number 2 because just for how happy I was with the adaptation. It transitioned so much better than I thought it would. Like initially I thought this was on 12 episodes, it seemed like it would need more. But the way the manga itself is set up, it's like once it actually started being adapted, or once you saw it adapted, it's like this is perfectly paced for a 12 episode series.
Yeah, no, it was very well paced, and I believe I was having a discussion with someone on Twitter, and I believe we came to the conclusion that this is, I won't say a lot alike to Kill la Kill, but the same sort of idea where they're both insanely over the top shows, but whereas Kill la Kill's over the top and then it's an action show with the over the top elements. This is the drama show with over the top elements. And either way, if you really enjoy over the top shows, then you would probably adore this because it's nuts. It does not let up. It makes you're at the edge of your seat the entire series pretty much, except for the first few episodes.
That's actually like one of the most like charming things. Like it in the manga and even in the anime, it has these cliffhangers that you don't get pissed at. You just want more.
And in the opposite direction of Charlotte, it grabs you by the balls and it does not let go until the very end. And I think that is the most charming aspect of the show, is that you really will get into it and want more every week. And it's got a satisfying ending. I guess that's the best way I can put it. It sets up its next arc and everything. But this was a good finale. And I'm not like I have to have more right now, but I'm not like I don't want more. I want more. But it's not making me I have to have more. It's not Gangsta where it left a bunch of shit hanging. It nicely wrapped itself up. It was satisfying, but it doesn't make me, it's not Charlotte where I'm like, that was fine. I don't want any more.
But yeah, like I said, I'm just really happy with how it turned out. I hope we get really hope we get the second season because there's like so much more crazy stuff to come. And I don't know, just really happy. Though I will say, anybody who pays attention, stay away from the Funimation dub.
Oh yeah, yeah. I will not be listening to the dub of this. You said you didn't even like the voices though, didn't you?
Yeah, like based on, I watched the trailer. Most of the voices I thought were okay, but then Andre sounds like Gollum from Lord of the Rings.
That's so
And then,
not fitting.
and that's the thing, like, in the manga and in the anime, or the anime perfectly shows how Andre is in the manga. He may be a freak, but he's generally a soft-spoken guy. He
Hmm.
doesn't say much, or he says it quietly. He's not like, some complete creep. And,
Well, that's our.
a lot of the critics, yeah, a lot of a lot of the criticisms I've seen thrown at the Funimation dub was that they aimed to make it more comedic when it wasn't, and a lot of people were saying they just didn't think that it was letting it speak for itself or letting the content speak for itself, and that's even more of a point now with the reference that I'm not gonna go too deep into it. Just the whole Gamergate reference in episode 7 that they put in for no reason.
I just have to mention that whole situation's freaking hilarious.
And it's hilarious, and also at the same time, just like to see how Funimation's responded to it, or at least the people who worked on the dub respond to it. It's just like, I'm not gonna. If I have to, I'll save up money and buy the Japanese Blu-rays
Yeah.
because I'm not gonna support a company that supports people conducting themselves like that. So, like I
Yeah,
said, like
I agree with
just
you
to
that
me, like I said, I didn't care about what I heard of the dub, and just to slip that in for no other reason,
it's
for no other
insanely
reason.
unprofessional, and
Yeah,
that's really all that needs to be said about the
yeah.
situation. The dub artist in this scenario did not act like professionals at all.
Like I said, to slip that in and to completely deviate from the source material like they did, to me, just shows a lack of respect. Like I know people will say, "Well, come on, man, it's prison school." You
But you're
don't.
you're right. There,
Yeah.
there really is a very obvious lack of respect for both the source material and the
And the
audience
author,
in that
and
scenario,
as well as the author. That's where I took
and the
issue
author. Yeah.
because you're changing this guy's work, and this guy's defending his change like it's his own work. It's not. So, uh, yeah, it's like I'm not going to support a company that decides to do that to a material. Just the way they went on the defensive. I know it was only natural, but I just wasn't a fan of that.
Well, I at least
I don't,
aren't going to support this dub or this dub team.
nah.
Not going to damn all of Funimation for this one dude or this one team being
I'm just saying, like,
unprofessional. But
I just personally, like I said, I didn't really care much for the voices when I actually decided to listen to a little more of it, and I'm really not a fan of the freedom they decided to take on that, like, because it's the original line that they replaced is something about Anzu mentioning I'm your upperclassman, and you replace that, it's like you must be one of those gamer grade freaks. To me, it just struck me as like you're just. I know the guy defended is like, oh, it's the only thing that matched the lip flaps. That's not. You could think of so much other things probably.
yeah, no, it was. Let's face it, it was a guy with no respect for the source material, just deciding to write whatever the hell he wanted.
And like I said, like I'll say I just don't. If I could take whatever measures I can to avoid the Funimation release or to avoid supporting the Funimation release, I'm going to do that
Hmm.
because I'm just not a fan of what they decided to do.
Yeah, no, I won't be buying this Blu-ray. I'm not going to let it tarnish me on Funimation as a whole,
Hmm.
but I will not be supporting this dub. And I hope that it makes Funimation realize, maybe we shouldn't, maybe we should, you know, part ways with, employees who can't act professional in the least. Because, it was like in any other industry, if a employee went out of their way to piss off a large portion of the consumer base, that
Hmm.
employee'd be fired real quick,
Yeah, pretty
real
much.
quick. So, you know, it's not like I'm even that offended by this slip or anything. I don't care one way or the other about Gamergate. This is just,
I just hated
I
that they even
don't
brought
like.
it into.
I'm constantly irked by rampant unprofessionalism that's very apparent in these online industries, and that's really what grinds my gears about the situation.
Yeah, and it's I'm just pissed that both the lack of respect and just bringing in something that wasn't related at all to the work, essentially bringing in an issue that you have some people who complain.
I should note that we are sort of getting we're like 2 hours in, so might want to.
Yeah, wrap this up.
Sorry, just let me wrap this up. I'm just surrounded, like I said, I'm just it didn't ruin the anime for me, but I still give it like a 9 out of 10 because I'm really happy with the adaptation. I'm just still pissed off about the lack of respect to the source material and just sort of lack of just to see that behavior in general.
Yeah.
It's never really impressing. But yeah.
All right. Well, I guess if you have nothing else to say about Prison School, you can move on to Gakkou Gurashi, or as its English name is, School Live.
Wow, what a fucking good series.
Yeah.
To continue off the arcs, this is the only show that's making me say Food Wars is probably my favorite show of the year. Gakkou Gurashi was damn good from start to finish. It's nearly infallible in my eyes. The finale was absolutely excellent. It's a show that really hits on all cylinders. It's way more mature than it has any right to be. It's the writing quality is great. It's one of the very few anime I can say feels like it tells a complete and very good story in a single experience. Gakkou Gurashi to me is on par with the likes of like Madoka Magica. This is an amazing series, and anyone who likes Madoka Magica would be very, very, it's very unlikely that you wouldn't get a lot of the same feel and same enjoyment out of
I should note that
Gakkou Gurashi.
Earlier in the season, I sort of made that comparison. Like, I haven't really kept up with it past the first episode because it just wasn't my thing. But I made the comparison that it was basically Madoka Magica, and Stranger sort of wasn't quite sure about that before. So I find it interesting that your comparison is to Madoka Magica.
No, I think Madoka is out of at least what I've seen, it's by far the closest comparison. They're very similar in terms of just kind of tone, really. I wouldn't say thematically, but definitely in terms of tone. I'd not honestly and say in terms of quality, they're both excellent series that tell a strong story in 12 episodes that really wraps itself up nice. I'd say the characters in Gakkou Gurashi are far more endearing and memorable than they are in Madoka. I think Madoka has a stronger thematic basis, but I think the writing is more mature and more relatable in Gakkou Gurashi. I can go back and forth between two. I think they are perfectly on par with each other. They're both excellent series. Like I said, Gakkou Gurashi is, if not my number one, definitely my number two favorite series of the season. Solid 9. Just I have very little. If I had to fault it, my only fault would be there's a bombshell towards the middle of the series that if you figure, it's finally revealed, like episode I think 6 or 7, and if you figure it out beforehand, like personally, I figured it out episode 2. They start dropping hints, and I'm like, something's not right here. If you figure it out too early, it causes the series to kind of lull in the middle before it picks up with more bombshells like in the last 3 or 4 episodes. But that's really my only complaint against it. And it's a conditional. If you don't notice the hints but from episode 2 to 4 or episode 2 to 5, you're going to be blown out of the water by that reveal. Yeah. I just was simply on the wrong side of stick. So it's like my only major flaw that's not a very shallow nitpick with the series is a conditional. Right. It's just an excellent show. The conclusion was really emotional and just the show is fucking good.
Yeah, I really can't say much more about the show than what you did. I give it a 9 out of 10 as well. I will say that, like, for me at least, I guess it was earned too. Like, I expected a little more to happen in the finale, but just regardless of that, I was just, really happy with how the show turned out, and it's probably my favorite of the summer.
Yeah, there's just not much more to say. Also, because if we said a ton more, it gets into real spoilers territory for the show.
Yeah.
It if you haven't at least given this a shot, it might not be the type of show for you like it is for JJ. It definitely has that weird thing where it's shifting back and forth between major tones. I think it does it very well. It's much better than Gate
I will
about it.
say I do think, JJ, that you should give Gakkou Gurashi and Prison School another chance, because you might. I think
Yeah,
especially Prison School, you would, if you gave it more than just the one episode, like the half
it's
episode that you gave it.
I don't
Uh,
really go back to stuff that I've dropped.
well, either way, I'm just saying. I think you would find sort of similar stuff to like as everyone else seemed to. But that said, it's a hater lover series, which isn't the case with Gakkou Gurashi. You should be. I think anybody should be
Yeah,
able to respect.
it's not a show for everyone, but I think it's a show for 9 out of 10 people. It's
Yeah.
like I said, it's a lot like Madoka Magica, and if you like Madoka Magica, I can't imagine anyone who liked Madoka not adoring Gakugarashi. It's that excellent of a show,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
and just from start to finish, just it's an emotional roller coaster that just endears itself to you at every point and turn, and it knows how to hit that stride between being heavy and being heartfelt at the same time.
Yeah.
all right. Well, let's see. Anything else about Gakugurashi?
I got nothing.
Not really. Watch it. That's all we can say.
Pretty much.
All right. Well, we'll end things off with Himouto Umaru-chan, or the series about the lazy piece of shit we all wish to be. that's about as much as I could sum up the series. It's a series about the lazy piece of shit we all wish to be that occasionally has cute moments.
Hmm. I don't remember if it was episode 11 or 12 where they had the one mini episode where like she's like having the big internal debate about what snacks to buy and stuff, and then you get to the end of the episode and she actually bought it for her brother who was doing the big project proposal that day, and she thought he was going to be upset because it didn't get announced and everything. And I would just like, that's way too cute and so unexpected out of Umaru. And the show became so much that it established her early on as such a little piece of shit that whenever she does something cute, it's just magnified to the umpteenth level. And that was the whole show. And I have to say, Umaru-chan is not the best show of the season in terms of like my objective view. It's probably my favorite. It's just so adorable, and I had so much fun every episode. I don't think there was another show this season where I was so excited to watch every new episode than I was Umaru-chan. Overlord came close. I was really excited for the later episodes of Overlord, but week in, week out, Wednesday became Umaru Day, and I'd sit my ass down in front of the TV and watch Umaru.
You even got the hoodie too.
I got the hoodie. I'd get snacks, and I'd sit down and I'd watch it, and it was so much fun. And I just adored the show. It was, and that's all. That's what I think is the correct word to describe the show. This is a fun show. It's not to be taken super seriously. It's not, this isn't going to light the world. Well, I say it's not going to light the world on fire. It's been very popular. It's selling really well. I think this is another one up there with Prison School that this is going to get a second season. Almost assuredly, this is going to get a second season. And I think the one thing that really does set it apart from other like just slice of life shows is the little hints of backstory that it keeps showing. Like we see every once in a while, like a mention of their mother, or just a brief scene of them as children, or just something that like raises your intrigue for the series beyond just the comedic or cute, put a smile on your face aspects.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as far as the going back to what you're mentioning about the hoodie, that's pretty much a meme at this point. Like, if you can get, like, a lot of people will have themselves basically arted out in Umaru style with some sort of animal hoodie, or have characters like from other series, like say Idolmaster, basically along that same style, and it's just a thing now. But yeah, I definitely say it's also a pet series for me. Like I wouldn't say I'm not entirely sure if I would put it up there or not, but honestly, it's just a really fantastic series. Just fun. It's just a fun series to watch.
Yeah.
Just cute, and the main character is funny. The main character is in fact that lazy piece of shit we all strive to be.
Yeah, and because of that scenario, it's such a subjective series that it's really hard to score. Like I try to be somewhat objective with my score, so I ended up giving it an 8. But if I was to judge it just off my enjoyment, this would be a 10. I loved Umaru. But it's just one of the things I can't see everyone else getting the same enjoyment out of it that I did, because it was just a series that went and hit me right in the heart and, grabbed hold and didn't let go. Made me want to watch it every week. It was just one of the best parts of my week, and I'm already missing it being Wednesday, and I'm like, oh, I can't watch it today. But it's just one of those. It is a series that I would recommend to everyone, but your mileage may vary. I've met people who don't like it. It's not a series that everyone is going to like, but it's one of those series that if you like it, you're going to love it. But I can't quantify that. It's not like Monster Musume where I'm like, yeah, if you aren't put off by fan service and if you like just over the top hammering of the genre stereotypes, if you're not put off by harem anime, you're gonna adore Monster Musume, but otherwise you are gonna hate it. I can't do that with Umaru. There's no defined genre about who's going to like this or not. It's going to be person to person, in my view. I don't see a way to define it anymore. It's just purely, I suggest it to everyone,
Yeah,
but I can't promise you'll adore it as much as I did.
Yeah, I remember Alex. I wasn't sure if it was yesterday or the day before. It was in in one of my mentions, but I think you sort of compared it to Watamote, and that really got me going because it is kind of in the same way light as Watamote, only
I'd
in
say
just
that's a very good comparison.
it's just in a different direction. Like
Yeah,
where
Watamote's a lot more cringy,
yeah
and it's a more defined with its like humor
yeah
direction, whereas Umaru, I won't say it's ill-defined with its, what its direction it takes, but it's not a cringy show
yeah.
at all.
It makes light of laziness, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yes.
The thing I would say is the main character is very much relatable, but she's just takes her particular relatableness off to the extreme.
Yeah. And so she is an off-putting character to certain individuals, but I would say it's the minority. I have to say that probably 8 out of every 10 people who I've known who watch this show really like it. So I'm saying your mileage may vary. You're probably going to like it if you're listening to this podcast, but I can't promise that.
All right. Let's see. I'd probably give it a. That's pretty tough. I'd probably give it a 9. Honestly, I enjoyed it a lot, and whether it's subjectively or objectively, I just really enjoyed it for what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How about you,
Uh,
Alex?
Probably an 8. There were probably an 8 sometimes, like depending, maybe in the early episodes, high 7, because having read the manga, I initially thought that 24, a full show was too much. It was too
Yeah.
long for the
Yeah, I
skits.
mean, it kind of does feel that way sometimes, but overall, I felt like it in the later episodes. It definitely sort of managed to either it was because we were getting so used to it, or if it was just starting to hit what it was trying to do. But I felt
Yeah,
like
like
later episodes,
yeah,
it did.
later episodes that sort of just went away. It sort of became just a very good adaptation of a fun slice of life.
Yeah.
So I'd probably finish just an 8, pretty much from me.
Yeah, like I said, I think there's some episodes that definitely, like I'd say definitely the finale that, I think the finale would have been better served as shorter. You just have the beach part without the bit in before it. But a lot of the episodes, I thought it ended up with a very nice mix of here's comedy episode with her acting like a piece of shit. Here's another comedy episode with her acting like a piece of shit. Here's an adorable episode with her and Kurie-chan. And you get like that 1/4 adorable to 3/4 funny. And I thought it was a great ratio for most of the series. There were episodes where it didn't work out as well and it kind of leaned too much one way or the other. But overall, like I said, every episode week in, week out, I enjoyed it. I can't think of a bad episode of this series. Like I said, objectively, I have to kind of put this at like an 8 because I don't think it does anything that like everyone or even your average viewer is going to be blown out of the water by or anything. But subjectively, it was a 10 for me. I enjoyed it so much. So like I said, it's very much your mileage will vary, but most people seem very high on Umaru. It's almost assuredly getting a second season. There's not much of a reason to not at least give this a shot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing else, it's a fun little slice of life series, and you might not end up liking it, but there's a good chance you will.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, well, that's as all of our simulcasts out of the way. So how about our top 3 of the season? So why don't you start off, Colin?
My top 3 would be, like I said, Food Wars, probably number 1, Gakkou Gurashi, probably number 2, close up there, and number 3 with Overlord.
Well, me, I would say Overlord, Food Wars, and Shimoneta.
Me, you gotta understand that I actually still consider Food Wars more of like the spring things. It's a continuation. Like I do overall think it's probably one of the best series of the years, but I'm not going to include it in my summer ranking. Same thing with Oda Monogatari. For like strictly summer things, I would say Gakkou Gurashi, Prison School, and I'm gonna put Jitsu over. I'm gonna put Jitsu over Charlotte because I think I overall had a lot more fun watching Jitsu than I did Charlotte at times.
I have to say the same thing. I think they flip flopped where I enjoyed Charlotte more at the beginning, but I ended up enjoying Watashi a lot more at the end.
Mm-hmm.
As far as just including this season, I would say mine would be Overlord, Shimoneta, and Himouto Umaru-chan.
Yeah, if I had to cut out Food Wars, Prison School is right now at my number 4, and Umaru is my number 5. So
All right, let's see. I guess we can briefly go over what next season looks like, since it looks pretty barren actually.
well,
That's
next
right.
season's One Punch Man,
One Punch
followed by
Man.
One Punch Man the week after, One
That's
Punch Man
pretty
the week
much.
after that, and it's the season of One Punch Man. I suppose we're also
That's
getting Seraph of the End, and if you're caught up on Monogatari, we get another Monogatari. But
uh,
it's the season of sequels to shows that weren't like huge names, and then just kind of weird or generic looking new season shows. Like I think it's Silverlink has like 3 or 4 shows coming out, and they all look kind of really generic. Like I kept going back and forth between a lot of them. Like, should I even give this a shot or not? I ended up like not giving most of them a shot, but it's a couple of those might end up good. I'm just gonna have to wait to see if people
Yeah,
tell me so. But
it's a lot of the shows that aren't sequels that I've already watched before are definitely like that. Like the
like
only
Asterisk War
yeah
or the one about I think the one about the it's a romance about let's see here. It was a magical academy for knights, and it had the one knight who
oh
couldn't use
yeah
it.
that's
It's called the Fallen Knight, and the princess Leia. It's like this is the most anime sounding anime of
yeah
all time. And I watched the trailer, and I'm like, it looks like it could be okay, but
yeah
holy shit, this is the most generic sounding thing. And that was the season pretty much is you know yeah, One Punch Man looks to be a slam dunk, but
yeah. The One
boy,
Punch
everything
I'm
else, it's not a continuation, looks pretty,
I'm
it's going to be very hit or miss.
Yeah, as far as One Punch Man, I've read the manga, so I'm very excited for that, but I'm also excited for Heavy Object, even though I'm not entirely sure how well it will be, simply because it's by the certain magical index and certain scientific railgun author, who's both of those series I really love. So
Yeah, yeah. Heavy Object is, I think, probably my number. If you just go off pure new series, it's my number 2 excited this season. Just like you said, because of it's a pedigree. I haven't watched Magical Index or Railgun, but I just know the general reception to those shows, and everything that author's done seems to have a consistent level of quality. So I imagine Heavy Object's going to be pretty good.
but other than that, it's pretty much sequels like Norigami, Garu, Utawari, Romano, and Tiki for me.
I think the only other one that I'm like in any way like this will assuredly be fun is Valkyrie Drive, because that's my replacement to Monster Musume as your over the top crazy etchy thing.
uh, I'll only really be watching One Punch Man and TQ. This season's gonna be just sort of watching other anime that I had to push off because of the summer season.
Check backlog. That's going to be a lot for me, and I'm giving stuff that I probably shouldn't be giving a chance. Like there's a harem anime about a kid who gets like taken to a town where the women it's like a women only town.
Shaman
So
sample.
he's the only man, and they're only allowing him in because the women need like exposure to kind of the real world. But he has to pretend he's gay, or else he'll be castrated.
Yeah, that one's called
So
Shaman's. I think the short name is gonna be called Showman Sample for that, because it's part of the actual name.
Right, so that was like it was like, okay, that's a neat enough idea that I'll give you a shot, but I'm not expecting anything. I think there was a couple interesting like mystery series that I'm going to give a shot. Like there was one about some chick who's obsessed with bones and they find a skeleton or something, and it's like a murder mystery. There was another one where it's just kind of like a sci-fi murder mystery, I believe. I forget the name right off the bat. Like there's just a few interesting looking shows, but nothing that I can like know anything about or can be like, yeah, this is uh yeah, there's just not a lot that I'm like super excited for. I think I'm giving 14 new shows a try, and that's including like TV shorts and stuff. And out of those, I expect at least like 4 drops. So compared to my like 29 shows given a try this season, it's quite a drop in interest.
Yeah. Well, I'm not entirely sure if we'll actually be doing that heavily of shows next season. We might do special one-offs or once a month or once every 2 weeks shows, but not quite as heavily as we've been trying to.
I don't think you could do more than 45-minute episodes on this coming season. There, unless we're decently surprised, which like I was surprised by Summer. Summer wasn't looking great, and we ended up with a lot of good shows.
Mm.
But I just don't see that happening. The shows this season sound too generic.
Yeah. Well, but yeah, that's all I have for this week's episode. So, hope you all enjoyed another episode of Divergence Cast. As always, we enjoy getting subscribes, likes, and shares. And should you decide so, should you decide so. And if you would like to leave a comment on what your favorite shows this season were, or if you wish to agree or disagree with us, please do so in the comments. And as always, our Twitter handles are in the podcast description, and we are all under My Anime List under the same usernames. And until next time, later.
Later.
Peace.